Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a Vancouver Island-based show that attempts to reach out across the country and the world, for that matter, looking at important stories and hopefully bringing interesting topics and relevance to all of these things. I'm Robin Adair, and speaking of relevance, across town is my co-host with the most, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. And John, it looks like that strange-looking orange man with the awful haircut and the weird voice is finally meeting his match in courtrooms in New York.
Robin, this is breaking new ground, new historical ground. Donald J. Trump has presented himself to authorities. What a crazy and amazing historic moment. They took his fingerprints and his photo. He isn't in jail, but the Donald, as he's known across the world, is going to court, facing a long list of charges, including an accusation that he paid off a woman during his presidential campaign. A woman, he tried to keep her quiet after he slept with her. All of this happening while his pregnant wife was at home. Ugly, ugly stuff, but it's happening.
And, it's official. Donald Trump has reached a lot of milestones. Let's list a few of those off now, John. First U.S. president to be impeached twice. He's also the first American leader in the Oval Office to incite an insurrection. And he's even managed to lose the popular vote twice. Now, I would think any one of these things would make the man a national disgrace, if not a laughingstock. But wait, apparently anything is possible in the United States of America.
Anything, Robin. I don't know what the kind of times that we're in. He's the first U.S. president to be indicted for a crime. But you know what? This is amazing. He could get off. And even if convicted, there are Americans who will say this is unjust. They're already doing that. And Donald Trump is being set up. And that the law is wrong. And imagine, he could still run for president from behind bars, Robin, and even win, conceivably. These are crazy days.
But the craziest thing is that there's probably several million people that still believe him and believe he is somehow being tried unfairly and that there's a conspiracy against him. He's a conspiracy theorist. It's sort of scary that many people would follow a guy like Donald Trump. And we'll certainly keep an eye on this story, Johnny.
Absolutely, Robin.
But let's now shift. Shift topics over. We keep mentioning that we've reached our 2-year anniversary, John. Mm-hmm. 2 years, and we've had success of having 900,000 people now have viewed various iterations of the Victoria Rumble Room since we got this all started. And we really respect that. And we also appreciate a lot of the feedback that we've been receiving along the way. Now, we had Sheila Orr on here about a week ago talking about Justin Trudeau's future prospects as prime minister, which was, as she said and admitted, not very strong or very good. And she even said it was no small thing that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are drawing big crowds in Western Canada. And she did, however, mention the Conservatives have a lot of work ahead in places like Ontario, especially Toronto, especially Montreal, if they really want to topple the Liberals. So there's lots still ahead, a lot of question marks still ahead. And, the jury's out.
Absolutely. But it sure looks like he's a very popular person in this country. Hey, we've had a number of positive messages about David Schneider, who spoke about downtown business in Victoria, which is suffering from crime and civic neglect. He's also had a lot to say about people working from home. I work from home, which we'll learn more about on a future show. Actually, I can't wait to have that conversation with him. So lots of reaction about that recently.
And so let's dig into that a little bit, John. Of course, we appreciate getting everybody's feedback about David and Sheila Orr. For example, Rogers, who's a big follower of our show and has been watching us since the beginning, recently sent us this note. Your 2-year anniversary was both entertaining and informative. Sheila and David Both were very good. Keep up the good work, gentlemen. I love your show.
And to all of our, at this stage, almost 900,000 viewers, that was not made up. There's actually a Roger, and he actually wrote that about us. So that's very encouraging. That's fun. And we, appreciate getting everyone's feedback. We just love it. Good and bad. Okay? Good and bad. I don't know how there can be anything bad, but we certainly encourage all commentary. We want to make a Victoria Rumble Room as good as possible, as entertaining as possible, as timely as possible. Now, one of the things that's hurting downtown business is the loss of major attractions, like the Maritime Museum and half of the Royal BC Museum, which is where I literally spent half of my time raising my children up there on the third floor. If Victoria is going to remain a world-class tourism destination, we need to maintain our world-class museums. I don't see how that equation should change. We need to encourage this. So let's ask the person in charge of making this happen. The BC Minister of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sport. Lana Popham is here. Let's zoom her in.
And now, joining us in the Victoria Rumble Room for the very first time is Lana Popham, someone I've known from afar and very close back in 2009 when she beat me in the race for Saanich South. And Lana, of course, has gone on to a fairly significant career as a minister in the provincial government. And it's great to have you on the show, Lana.
I'm so pleased to be here. And, I think back to 2009 and we were, I don't think we were mean competitors against each other. We got along great. So I'm so happy to see you again.
Well, happy to see you too, and really glad you could take some time. So right off the top, you're in a fairly new ministry, but I'm sure you're getting your feet wet. Tourism, arts, culture, and sports. Lots of questions. Of course, this is Victoria, so we have lots of questions about tourism and culture. BC Maritime Museum has been struggling to find a permanent home. Point Ellis House has just closed its doors. We're still wondering when we're going to see the third floor of the BC Museum, the Royal BC Museum, reopen and what that's going to look like. In your mind, isn't it important for Victoria and for BC to have all their museums fully functioning?
Wow, that's a great question. So yes, I have had since December to get my feet wet, as you say, in this new ministry, coming from agriculture for 5 years. But of course, I've lived on the South Island for a very long time. And so I do know the value of tourism personally. And I'll just say that I got my feet wet in my first job when I was 16 in a tourism business, which was April Point Fishing Lodge up on Quadra Island. And our community up there at that time either thrived with a good tourism season or it didn't. So as I use the lens of tourism in this new ministry, every asset that we have on the South Island and in British Columbia is one that brings value to the tourism industry. And so absolutely, it's in all of our best interests to have things open.
So what about the museums? That was great. I'd love to hear about your background. You didn't really answer my question. We seem to have a real problem with our museums right now. Like, for example, let's break some ground. When is the Royal BC Museum's third floor going to be open to the public again?
Yeah, and we've had a ton of emails about that. People miss the third floor, definitely. When I first became minister, I immediately asked for a tour of the third floor, especially Old Town, where we went in just so I could see the state of it at that time. Since then, I've brought the media through the third floor as well, so the media could understand the state of it. And I think what's come out of opening it up, so taking away the mystery, is that there's a lot of potential for that to reopen. I personally have said that I'd like to see it reopen for this summer's tourist season, and we're working with the museum to see how that can happen. But the third floor and Old Town is, some of it is not intact, definitely, but there's a lot of it that is intact, and there's a lot of I think interest in making sure we're telling the right story about the Old Town and the other exhibits that exist on the third floor. There's thousands of artifacts that are part of that exhibit. And so they're all as they think about what it looks like to reopen, they're wondering about, can we refresh some of those artifacts within Old Town? But yeah, I think that the message is clear. We'd like to see that open as soon as possible.
So you're really hoping for this summer. You think that's realistic?
That's what I've put out there. Of course, I'm not in charge of that decision in the end, but I've let the museum CEO know that that's what I would like to see. We are missing out on tourist dollars the longer that we keep that closed.
Now, we keep hearing that our restaurants and businesses are struggling to maintain services because of a lack of staffing. Okay, we need to attract young people back into this hospitality industry to fill these jobs. What are your plans, your government's plans to try to take care of this problem and accomplish this?
Such a great question. And I have to say that most stakeholder meetings that I'm having right now really focus on the issue of labor. And the restaurant industry definitely is one of those stakeholders. I've got a great working relationship with Ian Tostinson, who's the head of the BC Restaurant Association. We developed an amazing relationship through the agriculture file because, as you said, I just loved the agriculture ministry. I just loved it. It was a dream come true for me to be the minister. And I was very grateful that I was able to stay there for 5 years. It allowed me to take the things that are my passion, like the restaurant industry, and move them into a ministry where they didn't really have a profile before. And so from that, I learned a lot. I learned I have a great background to be able to advocate for the restaurant industry within this ministry. We need the restaurant industry from one end of the province to the other, and they're struggling. We recognize that since COVID, for some reason, it's been really hard to attract the numbers back into the hospitality industry like we'd like to see. There are some murmurings that is potentially starting to change. I was up at Mount Seymour just talking to them about their tourism opportunities, and they said for the first time since COVID, they've started to see different applications come in and numerous applications. So maybe we're hitting the time when we're going to see that change. But in the meantime, we also have recognized that there's a skills shortage, and there really hasn't been a focus on getting young people into food, wine, and hospitality. So last week was really important. We made an announcement up in the Okanagan in Kelowna at the Okanagan College, where there will be an epicenter of food, wine, and culinary and hospitality skill making.
Right.
Lana, so I'm switching back to culture.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, both Robin and I, as chairs of the Greater Victoria Chamber in the mid-2000s, were involved with lobbying government, advocating to government to alleviate some of the tax issues for film and industry to work on the island. I think we were rather successful, Robin. There were some policies changed. So we get how this thing works and how impactful it is to the community and creates jobs and opportunities. So let's talk about this new movie and TV production soundstage to be built in collaboration with Camosun College here in Victoria. Great for the local entertainment industry and the island. Can you give us an update? When do you see the project in place? Are there some issues that you're currently battling, etc.?
I love this project. I love it so much. So back, I don't know, I think it was in 2014, I got moved out of being a critic for agriculture, and I got moved into being a critic for arts and culture and small business. And it was at that time that I got to learn a lot about the film industry and the tax credits that the film industry gets here, and just how much it means to our economy, mostly on the Vancouver side of the water at that point in time. But the development of what it brings to our communities here on the South Island and Mid-Island actually is significant. I feel like it's very close, and we're going to have some good news to share very soon. People don't realize the impact that the film industry has in the province. And of course, there's the concentration of it is in the southern part of the province, but there's also films that get done up north. Every time a film sets up in a community, and I know this isn't going to be lost on you too, because you're very aware, but just the spin-off effects of having that happen, it's enormous. I remember going to a film studio in North Vancouver and they had done up a poster. I've actually requested that this gets done up again by the film industry. It was a poster with a movie in the middle and then all the businesses that get affected, including things like hairdressers, fence rentals, all of that, all of which we can provide on the South Island. And so any chance we get to attract a business like that is something that we will all benefit from. And so I am gung-ho on this project.
It's taken quite a while, though, to find this partner. Did somebody drop out? Is that why we're still waiting for that to happen? I thought they made quite an announcement a fair while ago that this was all going forward. Was it a stop and start, or what happened?
So the money for the business plan went to Camosun in 2021. And, we keep saying COVID has really affected just the speed of delivering, and it really has. And so, so I think we had to kind of see how things played out. But Camosun's been working very, very hard, and they're putting that out to tender, and this is where they are. So they've really been leading it, but we've been encouraging them to do so.
Well, certainly great to have Lana Popham on the show. And we'll have her back again when she has something substantive to tell us under her many files. So we'll keep an eye on that. I would love to see that BC Museum properly opened. And there are debates about what should and shouldn't be there, John. I really question some of the wokeism that's going into some of the decision making, the parsing away about what history should be and what it shouldn't be. And I don't mind a debate, but I also really resent that a lot of our history is being pushed aside because it somehow has been a victimization of people that are First Nations. And I apologize to the First Nations if they feel that way. I certainly want to see reconciliation in so many ways, but I don't believe even the First Nations really are demanding that we close the third floor of the Royal BC Museum. So I hope that there's a change there. But let's shift again, John, and let's talk about the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, that's only one file, eh? Ministry of Health, as opposed to 4 for Lana. Health Minister Adrian Dix has struck a deal with BC doctors and is spending millions to improve working conditions, at least that's what they tell us, to keep family doctors in practice. He's also increasing the role of nurse practitioners. And this is a good thing for healthcare.
And, there is another aspect of healthcare that we're going to talk about right now. It's a profession that has been ignored by the health ministry. It's called doctor's assistants. These are people with science degrees, years of training, university on top of their degrees, and they work alongside doctors. Many have received training in our armed forces and have worked overseas in dangerous places, in crises, in wars, and in national and international disasters. All of the prairie provinces now have doctor assistants working in medical clinics and emergency rooms. And they also work and have worked for many years in the province of Ontario, our largest province, also in the Atlantic region, but, drum roll, not in British Columbia. So let's ask why. Now, joining us from her home office in beautiful Comox, British Columbia, is Lisa Stewart to talk about physician assistants, a profession that's already been undertaken in 5 Canadian provinces, but not in BC. So, Lisa, right off the top, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's my favorite topic to chat about, physician assistants.
Well, we really think this is an important one for us to learn more about and our viewers to learn more about. And there's been such a profound change in our medical system. This doctor shortage, the massive lineups in emergency, all the pressures, not enough doctors, not enough nurses. And yet we have physician assistants, and they're not being allowed to do their jobs in British Columbia, at least not in our regular medical system. Why is that?
Gosh, and that's a really good question. And to be honest with you, I would really like to know as well. PAs have been working well in the military for I think about 60 years now. They've been working in Manitoba for about 30 years now, and in Ontario almost 20 years. So we are small. There's almost 1,000 physician assistants across Canada working. And I think a large part of us not being accepted in British Columbia yet is probably we just are still relatively unknown. I have to say that particularly in the last 5 years, our profession has grown hugely. As you mentioned, we're working in 5 provinces now, and soon Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, PEI, all those health ministries have expressed interest in implementing this role because it just makes sense.
Well, Lisa, maybe this show will help change that situation. Welcome to the Realm Room. And my question has kind of been answered by what you've been saying, but I'm going to drill a little deeper here.
Absolutely.
So as we've identified, as we all know, we've been hearing so much about the shortage of doctors and nurses, and as well as a bunch of new provincial and federal money being used to solve this problem and this crisis. So perhaps it might be good for our viewers to better now understand, where do physician assistants come from? Where are you trained? What in matching against doctors? Are many of the PAs originally trained by the military?
No longer, I would say. And when our profession first started, absolutely the bulk of the PAs were military, because the military has been training PAs, like I said, for about 60 years now almost. And obviously that role, it has evolved over those 60 years. But over the last 13, 14 years, physician assistants have been trained in civilian schools, affiliated with medical schools. In the last 13 years, there's been a huge influx of Canadian civilian trained physician assistants, and the bulk of PAs that are working right now are from those schools.
So would you be commensurate to what a nurse is trained to do? Is it a similar training? Is it something you'd be competing directly with nurse practitioners over? And in the case of British Columbia, are they playing favorites? Because they definitely want to open the doors for nurse practitioners and haven't shown as much interest in your line of work.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. One of the reasons that we hear from Adrian Dix in his hesitancy, I guess, to implement the PA role is because they're investing so much in the nurse practitioner role. Now, having said that, PAs and NPs it's really difficult to compare the two roles, and it's really difficult to compare PAs to nurses as well. And part of that is because we aren't trained like them really at all. And PAs are trained more like doctors, where our education is in the medical model. And our schools, the reason why we're attached to medical schools is because a lot of our classes are taught by the same teachers. They're taught by physicians. Sometimes they're taught by physician assistants. Through our clinical rotations, we're mentored by physicians. And a lot of people say that our education as physician assistants is about 75% of medical school. And some people even call it like a mini med school per se. But and when you look at the timing, how long it takes to produce a PA, our programs are about, I guess, 24 to 26 months long. And when you look at how long medical school is, over the course of 4 years, but when you compare, month to month and the content of information, our program is about 3/4 of a medical school. And so our role very much is very similar to more like a physician, I would say. Having said that, our intent is not to replace physicians. Our whole role, the design of it, is to be physician extenders. We are not independent providers. such as nurse practitioners. They're independent providers. We are not. We have a partnership with a physician, and our license is dependent on having a supervisory physician or a team of supervisory physicians. Some people, like myself in my most recent role, I worked in plastic surgery at the Foothills Medical Center, and I worked with a team of doctors that oversaw kind of what I did. Now, having said that, I still would work independently, but I didn't carry my own patients. I didn't have my own patients. The patients that I worked with were it was like a delegated authority from my supervisory physicians.
Lisa, thank you. I mean, I think education is really key here to allowing folks to know where these professions fit in sort of the health continuum. Okay. Now, as you alluded to, there's suggestions that physician assistants can deliver the same care as a family doctor. 86% of the time. You might have mentioned 75. We're in the same ballpark. Let's say if that's the case, let's talk a little bit about the humanity and friction, potentially or not, between PAs and doctors.
Unfortunately, we've gone through a few cycles of where the opposition has been like, yes, you're great. We absolutely, when we come into power.
Well, Kevin Falcon's saying
there.
very positive things about you now, right?
Absolutely. And we've seen that before and it hasn't happened. Now, I will say with the BC Liberals, about 6 years ago, they were the ones that really brought on nurse practitioners, or just first started that program, is my understanding.
Yes.
And so at that time, they truly were, their response was, well, we're implementing this new profession. We're trying to put most of our funding and focus on growing this. Nurse practitioners are an amazing resource and are absolutely essential to the future of healthcare here in BC, but it should not be to the exclusion of another, important profession that could help.
Fantastic having Lisa Stewart on the Rumble Room. I should mention we had a clip of her just a few days ago where she was again talking about the fact they can't get a meeting with Adrian Dix to talk about the future of physician assistants in this province. And we have had some feedback to the Rumble Room, John. Some people have been saying, well, how come, nurse practitioners aren't getting their due? I like nurse practitioners, people are saying. Well, the truth of the matter, John, is we like nurse practitioners. We think nurse practitioners are incredibly important. They need to be part of the mix. They need to be expanded because we have a terrible problem with waiting lists and short healthcare staffing. And we've got to do something about it. Bring more to the table, bring physician assistants, bring more nurse practitioners, bring other professions. Let's fix this problem. And no one's saying there's a bad idea when it comes to improving things for especially people in our age group who need more medical attention. And on that happy note, John, maybe it's time to say a fond farewell and also explain to people how they can get on board with the show.
Love your viewpoints. Love the viewpoints. We need to look at all the solutions to try to solve this medical crisis. Yeah, we've had an interesting show, Robin. Like every show is. Every day there's more news. I can't believe how much fun we're having. And so before we go, thank you yet again to the 900,000 people plus who've checked out our program over the last 2 years. We'd love you to like us. We'd love you to subscribe to us, especially on YouTube, where we're really starting to get a nice uptick. We also get great uptick on our Facebook page. Lots of people watching our show on a weekly basis. We got tons of activity on our Twitter page. I can't believe it. And of course, on our sort of peripheral platforms, which get a lot of activity. Those are the Facebook news group sites that we're involved with, the Twitter, the Instagram sites, and the TikTok site. Always bringing more people to listen to the interviews and the viewpoints that we present. So, for now, forever, I remain your Croatian sensation, a man from Split, a beautiful city on the Adriatic coast, but not without a split personality. John Jurisic is my name.
And I'm Robin Adair, and I am from Mission. And my mission in life, John, rumble on.